Good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Simon, this is Philippe, and we're going to talk to you about ISO 19443 and a little bit about how organizations can think about their talent and about organizing themselves to work with 19443. Nearer to my mouth. Okay, there we go. They couldn't hear at the back. So let's start with a quick question. How many of you have been working or are addressing ISO 19443 at the moment? Okay, so about a third of you. Now, I don't know whether that means that I've got a third of you to impress or 2/3 of you to include on my next sales drive, but we'll work that out later on. So, what can you expect from today? We're going to talk a little bit about the context and the requirements of 19443. Philippe is going to talk to you about some of the key learnings that we've had with clients on their certification journey. And then we're going to move into the little room next door and talk about any question or any answer that you want. Literally, we're putting both of ourselves up to, you can ask us anything you like. The only thing I don't know are the winning numbers to the Euro Millions on Friday. Apologies. Okay, so hopefully you'll go then with some practical takeaways from today's session. So we'll talk a little bit now about the nuclear supply chain landscape. Now, when I was at WNE number 1, there weren't so many people. WNE number 2, there were quite a lot of people, not so many visitors. Now we're at WNE number 6, there are lots of visitors, there are lots of people, there are lots of potential projects, and there are quite a few projects that are working. What does that mean? It means that 10% of the world's energy that's generated by nuclear is going to have to increase just physically by the number of people that are in this room. It also means that we've got COP30 next week, and they're going to talk about renewable energy, they're going to talk about the environment, they're going to talk about biodiversity, and you know what? They're all going to use data, and every single one of the data centers is going to need energy to store all of their opinions and regurgitate them using AI. So guess what? They're going to need some more sustainable power. So definitely nuclear is the way forward, and definitely ISO 19443 will help, because the current landscape is going to have a lot of challenges with regard to competence, with regard to collaboration, with regard to the sheer need for more fabricators, more materials, more people. There aren't enough people in the world to do this. Most of them are in this room at the moment, I think. So let's make sure that we take that on board. And then we think about what 19443 is trying to do. What 19443 is trying to do is not make your product conform, okay? Somebody told me that 19443 makes sure that all of the products are safe. No, it doesn't. 19443 makes sure that we understand the risks. It makes sure that we think about how we are going to plan to eliminate and certainly to mitigate all of those risks and produce a compliant system which will enable us to think in a compliant way and then meet the standards and end up with a compliant product. So we're going to talk a little bit about counterfeit, fraudulent and suspect items. We're going to talk a little bit about a nuclear safety culture. We're going to talk a little bit about the graded approach, and we're going to talk important to nuclear safety. But actually we're probably going to start with important to nuclear safety, because 19443 is all about companies that are involved with products and services important to nuclear safety. So if what you do cannot directly relate to nuclear safety, ISO 19443 certification may not be for you, but the principles from it will work for you anyway. It's all about ensuring consistent quality and safety thinking and addressing quality and safety risks associated with the nuclear industry. So it's not in and of itself going to give you a compliant product, but it gives you a compliant mindset. Okay. So we all know about quality management principles, and many of you will know about the ISO 9001 set. Basically, we add 4 additional boxes to our quality management principles. But I want to be in your photograph. And if you come and talk to me afterwards, I'll let you have the copy of the presentation. Okay, so I'm summarizing what's there, but what you can see is that 19443 has got some significant additions to 9001. It's got some minor additions, and the good news is that the green one doesn't have any additional requirements. Okay, so what you need to consider is your basis is 9001, and also remember 19443 does not replace NQA1. It may work in concert with it, but NQA1 is related to products and product conformity and meeting 10 CFR 50 Appendix B. It's not about this. Okay. Philippe is now going to talk to you about some client learnings and some practical examples around the 19443 client journey.
Thank you. Just to start, for the ISO audit and nuclear, the slide before with all the steps of the 9001 is very important, because the nuclear shame is based on the 9001 standard. And during audit, all the company focused to the nuclear requirement, and in some cases, we forget the standard and the basis of 9001. When you implement the nuclear, never forget the basis of the 9001. Today, in terms of findings, in terms of failure, 50% of failure during an initial audit will be the basic of 9001. And this is important to remember this during your cycle of certification and implementation. First item we develop is the nuclear safety culture, clearly based on the leadership involvement. A nuclear deployment without the leadership of the top management is not possible. This is clearly defined in the chapter 5, but not only the chapter 5. The top management will be the decision, and as defined in the chapter 8, you can manage the timing, you can manage the cost, but without compromission with the nuclear safety culture. And it's a fundamental point, and with the example of the top management. Really, if I summarize, this is more than the 9001. The nuclear shame is a team spirit and all the company. In some cases, we split the company in some organization, but managed and supported by the top management. This is one fundamental, and to establish and to maintain. I summarize a little bit, but this is the protection of people. This is a definition of the nuclear safety, the leadership example, accountability, learning orientation. You have this learning about the CFSI and other topics. This is a case support and open dialogue. During one of my last audits, I have an operator who reads the work instruction, he reads the instruction, and he said, "There's a problem, I must stop." And it's not because there's an audit, it's because they have the learning to say, this is not a standard situation, and now we must ask the question and stop. And during an audit, it's a strange example, but we consider this is a cultural point, and it's fundamental. Some major point, and a lot of discussion during the beginning of the standard. This is determination of ETNS, important to the nuclear safety. of course, it's deployed with the planning, with the quality objective, with the planning of change, with, and we spoke just after, the graded approach. But this is really a key point, and the understanding of this key point is how to understand ITNS defined by the customer, defined by the regulation, and how do you implement in your organization. And this is not all level, this is a key point to establish the good level for each item. And in the first item, I spoke about team spirit, and ITSN, it will be a team approach. It's only in charge of the product, only in charge of quality, only in charge of blah, blah, blah. It will be not valuable and stable. I will just summarize, but this free slide by Simon is important. This is the definition. What is defined for the final user who operates in the nuclear, and how we define the normal operation, the standard operation, and the exceptional operation. This is level of the executor. Level by the owner of the equipment. And just to summarize, he will take the safety function, he will tie the design code. This morning we spoke a lot about SME or SSM, and he will manage this level. And at the final step, and the more important, the key requirements at your level, how do you define what is important for the safety by the product you manage, by your organization. And today we focus all about the product, but remember, this is a mix of the product and your organization to define the ITSN and what is important. If you have a key point in your process, it will be probably a key point for ITNS. And this is a mix of this, important to demonstrate and to maintain. Now we have more than one cycle of certification, and we say in some cases, it will always, the definition is the beginning and no change. And your organization is change. And remember, it will be never ending and always in progress. This is not a static situation. And when you have a good approach for the ITSN, you have identified what is important, you will approach the graded approach for the application of the quality requirement based on your internal rules, based on the customer specification, based on the regulation, and you will adapt this level for you and for all the supply chain. Important the supply chain. In some cases, you will be responsible for the supply chain. In some cases, you will ask to the supply chain to define. This is your strategy, and this is really important. Risk-based thinking, and also the importance of 9001. This is one item since the 1001, the risk thinking approach. It will be proportional with the risk, compliance with the requirements, and if I speak about the supply chain, this is a stakeholder engagement, and this is not the most easy. This is as we identify the different level of maturity of the system. And last but not least, counterfeit, fraudulent, and suspect aspects. Focus on nuclear, but not all. I know also the aerospace standard, and this is the same for aerospace. You identify always with the process map This is applicable in all the system and at all level of the system, and this is the key point, and also develop in the company and in the supplier. Small summary of the definition. Counterfeit, if I can say, it's a copy. Fraudulent, it's a more dangerous because it's internationally representative. And suspect, as I said before, there's something strange. You must have the question and stop the process and define the suspect items. In our culture, in some cases when we discuss about this, it's about the product and the document. And today, I don't have the split, but the concrete example will be also the product, but also the documentation. And this is a key role and important role to have the right people at the right place for documentation. Yeah.
Okay, so just to sort of start to round this up, I'm not going to stand in front of it, it's all right, I'll stand over here. Just to round this up then, as an example, there are many examples, but we're in France and I didn't want to mention any of the French examples because I still want to get out of the airport on Friday. But the example I've chosen is one that is in the press, so King's College London in a 2024 paper published in their handbook of case studies, an example of a Korean nuclear counterfeit, fraudulent and suspect items issue back in May 2013, so long enough ago that I can probably get away with talking about it without anybody lynching me between here and the door. But in effect, this was related to the falsification of certification. But that certification, because it was false, meant that all of the equipment was suspect because you didn't know if it was the right stuff or the wrong stuff. It led to 6 nuclear power stations being taken offline, and that meant that it took them about a year, just over a year, to get themselves into a position where they were confident with where they were. I don't know how much it costs in Korea to take a power station offline, but I know that in the UK they tell me it's £1 million per power station per day. So if that was more than 365 days, I'm not going to try and add that up. You can all work it out for yourselves. It's a hell of a lot of money just to not be producing power. So that's why CFSI is so important, because it's needed. And remember, you're all going out there with your nuclear power stations telling people that they're going to run for 60 years or lifetime operation to 80 years. I was talking to somebody yesterday. We worked out that if you were working on a nuclear power station today, it would be your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, or your great-great-grandchildren who are going to be doing the decommissioning. And if we don't get the paperwork right, or we don't get the right data file, and we don't get it hacked by somebody today, we're not actually very sustainable, are we? Because sustainability is all about doing the right things today. No, I'm not His Royal Highness Prince William. He's the one doing the Earth shot, but I'm still thinking about our environment. And so we need to make sure that with CFSI, we understand about supplier evaluation, we understand fully about traceability, we remember that inspection needs to happen, it needs to be proportionate, and the inspectors need to be SQEP as well as the people, suitably qualified and experienced personnel, as well as the people who are actually making the job. And that means we also need suitable awareness training around lessons learned, that other thing that we all talk about. Now, on the topic of lessons learned, I hope everybody has learned at least one thing, even if it's only that I'm trying to get out of Paris on Friday, not Thursday night, because I think you're all going on Thursday night, so I'm going to go after you've all gone on Friday morning. The restaurants will be more empty, and hopefully the airport will be as well. But I hope you've also learnt something else. Now, we've managed to bring this back to help them with the timing. That's how helpful LRQA are. We'll even sacrifice some of our own time to help others. So mindful of that, I very much would like to talk to each and every one of you. And if I can't do that, Philippe will talk to the other half. We're going to move into the little room next door. You can join us for a chat. Those of you who I stopped taking photographs can give me a business card and I'll sort you out with a copy of the presentation. And I very much hope you've enjoyed this afternoon and you'll come and talk to us next door. Thank you very much.